Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Tuesday, February 5th, 2013, and I'm Darko. Alright, well, I was talking yesterday about we're just continue with Mali and that today, so here we are. And it's funny that they're using the word the good extremists and bad extremists. That's what we were just talking about, the good guys and the bad guys. That's all a lot of the mainstream media likes to paint the picture as. And of course, you know, the good guys and bad guys can switch, right? So it says here, it's hard to contemplate the audacity of the Guardian in their concern for the victims of extremism in Mali, as 2 years ago they were cheering on almost identical extremists in the very same region. So I guess here's some photos of them. It says Libya's rebels were in fact al-Qaeda's U.S. State Department, United Nations, and the UK Home Office listed terrorist organizations, the Libyan Islamic Fighting Group, who committed sweeping atrocities, even exterminating entire cities with little or no condemnation from the West. Now they will fight in Syria with Western arms and cash, while their ideological compatriots in Mali serve as a casus belli for French occupation. It also says that the UK government and media outlets downplayed and largely ignored the brutalization of black communities during the Libyan conflict, and its aftermath reports of ethnic cleansing were conveniently swept under the carpet. It goes on here and it says that these extremists who were committing these atrocities and war crimes were subjected to the least amount of scrutiny possible, as they were essentially fighting on behalf of Western interests and were backed by military, by NATO. It says here, compare this to the current situation of Mali, a near autonomous region in the north of the country is this time directly threatening Western interests so miraculously that it's all systems go with regards to rigorous reporting and these outrages. So what does this tell about the government policy and the news report that shamelessly supports it? It tells us that human rights and democracy play little or no part in the decision to promote and pursue wars. The London Guardian can and do propagandize a cause based solely on government's financial interest. From February 3rd, we have French warplanes keep pounding with airstrikes northern Mali, and Francois Hollande of France saying that we do not foresee staying indefinitely. That's what I keep saying in all the news that they're pulling out in March. So despite Holland's playing to the crowd as the savior of Mali for successfully bringing several towns back from being under control of the military, militia or junta, the war seems far from over, and French warplanes continue to hit targets in the northern deserts. These airstrikes appeared focused around the town of this Tesselit, not far from the Algerian border, and French military spokesman declared them important airstrikes that targeted logistics bases. Lastly, as we said earlier in the article, Holland insists that they don't see them basically being there for a long time, but there are already indications that the rebels are transitioning into a more straightforward insurgency, setting the stage for a long, ugly war in the northern desert. Then the other side of these French airstrikes in Mali, they ruined everything I had. So as Holland is triumphant about France's operation in Mali, stories are emerging which show a different side of the war. A journalist tells RT that while airstrikes target rebels, civilians are often the ones who die. Quote, we're learning what happened in battle day by day. In the town of this Kona, we heard stories from the fog of war. Rebels fled the north when French troops showed up, and it's reported that the cost of that victory was high. While French planes killed only 2 rebels, the number of civilian casualties were an estimated 14. So one individual said, I wasn't home when the bombing began. I started praying when I learned my house was under attack. They ruined everything I had, my family and my livelihood. My children are 11, 10, and 6. They all died, a farmer told RT. Similar stories where some kids came running up to us and said their mom had died. I brought them to our house. They said their mother died after an hour of clinging to life. The children have nobody else but us, says one resident. Another story involved a mother who died from shell splinters, leaving 3 children behind, including a newborn baby. This is, I guess, what French president is declaring a victory. These residents refuse to be persuaded by military claims of victory and say that people in the town say French war crimes must be prosecuted under the Geneva Convention. But I guess it's going on the side of the Malian soldiers, too. Remember, it was either AU forces or Malian soldiers that were basically carrying out summary executions. It was the Malian soldiers, but then there's also stories of raiding the wrong house and killing everybody in there too. They said here that to force me to talk, they poured 40 liters of water in my mouth and over my nostrils. This is 3 suspected jihadists were arrested by these Malian forces. So they put water, basically waterboarded him, which made it so that I could not breathe anymore. For a moment, I thought I was actually going to die, said one of the men from the central Malian town. Then you have Biden saying U.S. backs France on UN occupation of Mali, cheers French decisiveness in invading Mali. Meeting with the French president, Vice President Joe Biden cheered the French decision to invade Mali last month, saying it was a decisive action in the interest of the U.S., in parentheses, against China, and improved the power of the French military. Then U.S. France agreed to set up a UN Mali force. Going down, he said, we agreed on the need to, as quickly as reasonably possible, establish the African-led international mission in Mali, and as quickly as is prudent, transition that mission to the United Nations. Biden said, I don't even know if that statement makes sense, but Biden arrived in the French capital on Sunday to hold talks with Holland. And I just saw another article about the UN GMO rice arriving safely to Mali and all this infrastructure that's put in place, all the money and stuff like that for the refugees. So I have to keep reiterating this because there's a lot of truth to what Morris is saying, which is half of this mission, besides natural resources, is displacing people. So it's like when you look back at Afghanistan and Iraq, you always say, well, what was accomplished? I mean, what the hell, It's like, even if you don't agree with, like with Vietnam, or something like that, it's the same type story. I mean, what did they actually do? You think it was oil, but it's like maybe it wasn't just oil. Could have just go in there, bust a bunch of people up, demoralize them, fragment them, their society, kill their culture, and then leave them, and then declare victory. And of course, you get your own regime change. But they always have all this infrastructure to back it up for all the refugees and the displaced people. And I think that's why you're seeing more and more suicides every year, every month, just breaking records as far as the army and military suicides go. And the military doesn't know how to handle that. And I don't think they really care to a certain extent. Like I said, they want to go to robots and automation of drones and aircraft and ships and stuff like that. They just want robots. They don't want humans with emotions that have to deal with the repercussions of these orders that they're carrying out because they don't make much sense and they're doing exactly what I said. So these people, they come back and they don't really know how to deal with that. I mean, what are they actually accomplishing? France protects Nigerian uranium mines, says Niger has confirmed that French special forces are protecting one of the country's biggest uranium mines. It says mining in Niger is the world's 5th largest producer of uranium. Then Mali Tuaregs sees 2 fleeing Islamist leaders. I'll include this article just briefly, just because it shows you what I was talking about before, about how these Tuareg rebels were in the north and that, trying to get their own autonomy, and then in came the Islamists, the international mercenaries that are usually hired by Israel, UK, US, Qatar, and that. The Tuareg group says it's willing to help the French-led mission by hunting down Islamists. It has also offered to hold peace talks with the government in a bid to heal wounds between Mali's Saharan North and the black African-dominated South. So they go on there, it says one of the first conditions for reconciliation is to disarm the rebel groups. It's the Tuaregs, right? So in order, first they have to disarm them, then they can hold their farce elections.
على الأقل بحسب زعم المعارضة السورية الجهة التي تقتل الأولاد هي إيران وحزب الله. تحدثت مع أحد قادة المعارضة بالطبع هو منفي خارج سوريا واسمه عبد الله تميمي وهو إمام من حمص. لنستمع إلى المحادثة التي أجريناها معه.
We're not afraid to talk so freely and to talk to us. You're not afraid that the Syrian government will try to get to you, will try to harm you or your family?
There are about $5 million reward to kill me by Hezbollah itself, because they think that I am the spiritual leader of the Sunnis resistance and the Sunnis fighters, the freedom fighters. Now, every Syrian man, every Sunni Syrian man, looking at Israel, and this is the reality. Israel, it is not our real enemy. And it's never been our real enemy. That's the media of the regime, just to make an excuse to take all the rights of the Syrian people by the name of the war against Israel and liberating Palestine. And every Sunni knew this reality, know this reality very well. And we all know now, we are in the same front with Israel against this barbarian killers. And we are calling the state of Israel to support the demands and the rights of Sunnis in Syria and Lebanon to get their freedom.
Okay, this article I have is Israel ex-spymaster calls for strong ties with al-Qaeda. So it says, Israel's former military intelligence chief has called for the Zionist regime's stronger ties with al-Qaeda-linked militants in Syria to face Iran. Major General quoted by Jerusalem Post said Israel should strengthen its relationship with emerging Sunni forces in Syria to confront the big enemy, which is Iran. He stated the ongoing destructive violence in Syria has brought about strategic benefit for Israel. Israel and al-Qaeda are two sides of the same coin in Syria. It says Israel and al-Qaeda are two sides of the U.S.-dominated imperial system, an imperial system which has waged war on the independent nation of Syria, attempting to destroy that country, says the founder of StopImperialism.com. The analyst went on to say that after the foreign-backed efforts to topple the government of Assad failed, Israel launched military strikes against Syria in an attempt to galvanize the Syrian opposition and give them another way to criticize and attack Assad. Syria defense minister says the army will beat the rebels. Goes on here and it says that they hinted that the Syrian government will not respond to an Israeli airstrike near Damascus last week. On Monday, he said that the army would succeed against rebels trying to overthrow the President Assad and hinted that they wouldn't respond to this airstrike. The heroic Syrian Arab army proved to the world that it is a strong army, a trained army, and that the army cannot be broken. He portrayed the air raid as a response to the failure of the rebels, who he described as tools of Israel. So I guess he said, why does Syria not respond? It's the Israeli enemy which responded. When the Israeli enemy saw that its tools were being pursued and they did not achieve the results, it intervened. It's a response to our military work against the armed gangs, he added, referring to the rebels. Then we have apocalyptic Iranians refuse Assad's request to bomb Israel. So in the U.S. and Israel, there's an obsession with Iran at this grave threat of their nuclear weapons. And it says here, in order to believe this incredible tale, one must accept the claim that Iran's leaders are suicidal maniacs who don't respond to the deterrent factor that has informed every nuclear and non-nuclear state since the end of World War II. But it goes on here, it says, this ignores so much history that it's hard to know where to start, but here's one starting point. At times of Israel, Iran reportedly refuses Assad's request to hit back at Israel. It says Israel preemptively bombed Syria in a dangerous strike that could easily be considered as an unprovoked act of war. Iran is Syria's main ally, but Assad's request that Iran help retaliate was faced with stiff refusal. Not only does Iran appear deterred by Israel and the U.S.'s more capable military, but are even restrained in the cases of Israeli aggression. So it goes on here, it says Iran won't even retaliate when they have the opportunity. Ahmadinejad supposedly saying, this is from Haaretz again, so it's all from Israel and Zionists, Syria needs national understanding. War is not a solution. Said a government that rolls through war, its work will be very difficult. A sectarian war should not be launched in Syria. Obama to visit Israel, first time as president. But I think the last time he was there was before he was president, because I've seen a picture of him before. But I guess it's for March 20th. Then we have Osama bin Laden's hideout town hopes makeover will bring back tourists. They're going to actually build an amusement park in this place. And I remember seeing a video where the residents said that he didn't even live there. So some really weird stuff going on. I don't think we'll ever stop hearing about this damn story bin Laden raid, where the U.S. supposedly killed a guy that was already dead. Leaked Justice Department memo reveals legal case for targeting killings of U.S. citizens. The memo greatly expands the meaning of imminence to allow for targeted killings without evidence of an active terror plot. White paper concludes that assassinations of Americans are legal if the U.S. government says they are senior operational leaders or al-Qaeda or an associated force. So, that's pretty broad. So be posted and keep moving. More than 50 countries helped the CIA outsource torture. Some were U.S. adversaries like Iran and Syria. Let's not forget Libya, right? But now they're actually backing those same terrorists to bring down these countries. So U.S.-led attack kills 6 civilians in western Afghanistan. All victims were women and children. So North Korea video shows U.S. city under attack. So goes on here, the video resembles New York engulfed in flames after an apparent missile attack. And Skull and Bones John Kerry, who whisked his way into the Secretary of State role, Warns of punishment for North Korea nuclear tests. This is GGN. Thank you.